Hello, my name's Jane Draycott, and I'm here in what I hope is the quietest room in the house where we live here in Oxford. And I'm feeling very lucky right now because Carcanet are due to publish my next collection, The Kingdom, very soon, this autumn. And I owe many, many thanks to Michael Schmidt, of course, and especially to John McAuliffe, who has been so helpful as an editor, helping to kind of put these poems together, getting them to meet each other for the first time between covers like this to make this book. I suppose this desk is the place where I've edited and revised a lot of those poems, although it isn't the place where I've started most of them. So I tend to write out of the house. I tend to go out to write first drafts and notes and early ideas for poems in places like libraries, cafe tables, trains, all the usual writerly cliche locations. I think that's a part of the search for some kind of anonymity in the place where you discover the poem, however strange that may seem, and it relates in some way, I think, to the narrative spaces in quite a few of these poems, the slightly elsewhere worlds and realms that a lot of the poems end up in when they set off and with me in chase behind them. The first poem I wrote is probably a good example of that kind of poem, even though it's actually ended up as the closing poem of the book. So I'll read that now. It's called The Experiment, and I hope this will sort of explain a little bit of what I mean. The Experiment. Dearests, I have arrived. Some things have already been taken, the small blue bowls and airmail stationery, the summer tablecloth, only slightly blue, and the half-light is now quite cleared. All I can say is, try when you come not to think of the dark. Take the boat and do the experiment. You will have to put every ounce of what you know into it, or it will never lift off or be carried across. In a small country like ours, you must be prepared for no one to think this possible. Like the first pioneers of flight, those two so close all their lives, watching the wind and birds, their dazzling feats and equilibrium. Sleep is chalky now. Most of the underblue has gone from beneath the bed. Only the light remains, and the roses, wild and idle, just as you will remember them. Stay together whenever the times allow. There are other poems in the collection whose imaginative roots I can probably track more clearly than that, probably including the title poem, The Kingdom. So there are different kinds of kingdoms and realms and psychological worlds across the different poems in the book, but the title poem began life when I was reading about the history of medieval hospitals in Europe. I've been reading quite a few, or dipping in and out of, quite a few medieval Middle English documents, non-literary things like 11th century encyclopedias and compendiums of medical remedies. And I was finding that so much of what was in these seems dateless, really. And that included the foundations of these first hospitals across Europe, places trying to help people, provide for people essentially who had nowhere else to turn. And they weren't lay institutions like our modern hospitals, of course. They were religious groups, religious institutions offering help, shelter. The ultimate focus, of course, was on the saving of your immortal soul, probably as much or more than salving the ills of your body. But they apparently he had often to turn people away, it seems, and all of which brought to mind some kind of half-remembered, badly remembered biblical references to the kingdom of heaven and the idea of the kingdom of heaven and how tough that was to get into. So I'll finish with this title poem, The Kingdom. I was hungry, coming up from Kent, resorting hither after the summer, my tent a riverbed, seeking herbergement, some accommodation among the stone. The men coming onto you, the taxi drivers saying, here, jump in. No, no, you don't need no money. I was thirsty, languishing in the doorway behind the post office, the churchyard water so cold for washing. What aileth thee, woman? And from my mouth came leaves, and from the cracks in the pavement came syllables. I was a stranger, turned half to stone, seeking relief in severe weather, coming hither in search of something out of this madness, something to inherit